Story 1. If any of you watched the television show Jackass when you were younger, that show gave me a phobia. As you might imagine, it was from Steve-O doing something. Remember the paper cut clips? Yes, those, where he purposely gave himself paper cuts between the webbing of all his fingers, and then did it at the corner of his mouth by sliding a sheet of paper across so fast it would open up slits. That imagery still makes me grimace just thinking about it, let alone imagining it happening. I both hate and respect Jackass's crew. I think they were all unironically masochists who recorded their fetishes. Story 2. I am really not a fan of cockroaches of any kind. If I see one, I imagine seeing them everywhere for weeks on end, even if I am in a completely different place. Story 3. Whales. They are so big and terrifying. Once I went to the Museum of Natural History in New York City, and they had a life-size replica of a blue whale hanging from the ceiling. I could not stand to look at it. Story 4. It's one I haven't even found a name for, but it's the fear of not being understood verbally. Like if I spoke and it was just unintelligible to others. It's an actual phobia, maybe tied to obsessive-compulsive disorder too, but because of it I also improved my English accent as much as I could. Story 5. I read everyone's comments mainly to see if someone mentioned mine, but no, I have a phobia of vinegar. Story 6. I hate talking on the telephone and will avoid it if possible. I often say I have hearing problems and am unable to talk on the telephone. I call it phoniophobia. Original, huh? Laugh out loud. Story 7. A sparrow flew into my studio apartment once, and I was trapped in the bathroom for a couple of hours. I basically emptied the bathroom by opening the door and throwing towels, toothpaste, soap, and other items in the direction of the bird until it flew away. I don't know what I thought a little sparrow was going to do to my 6-foot, 200-pound self, but I felt helpless under the beak. Story 8. Hitting a moose with my car, getting trapped inside because of the moose, then when the moose dies and its temperature drops, all the thousands of ticks on it leave and find the next closest warm body, me. Story 9. I read through all the phobias here and I still feel like a weirdo. Mine is a fear of being intubated, being strangled or suffocated. It has never happened, so I do not know where it came from. Story 10. I don't like my neck being touched. Annual physicals are torture. Writing this makes me scratch and protect my neck. It is awful. Story 11. Wind turbines are those really big machines you see while traveling. I have never been close to one and do not know why I fear them, but when I see them, I experience intense anxiety. Story 12. Loud noises such as thunder, fireworks, guns, and balloons popping scare me to the point of panic attacks. The only beings I have found who can relate are dogs. Story 13. Going downstairs, I always have an intrusive thought that I am going to trip and fall face first, breaking all my teeth. Story 14. Lyme disease and all other tick-borne diseases. Incurable mystery diseases like myalgic encephalomyelitis and chronic fatigue syndrome. Neurological and muscular degenerative disorders. Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Story 15. I am incredibly scared of centipedes and millipedes. I cannot even watch a video or look at pictures with them in it. I am not nearly as scared of spiders. Story 16. Megalophobia is the fear of large objects. Do you want me to stand next to a really big tree? No, not going to happen. Stand next to a large cruise ship? Definitely not going to happen. Even thinking about standing next to an airplane might cause me an anxiety attack. I hate it, and it is so irrational. Story 17. Crabs. When I was 15, I went to stay at a beach house with my best friend's family. Within the first 10 minutes of getting in the water, I was pinched by a crab. They were almost translucent, and I quickly realized that the many holes in the ground on the beach were where they lived. They mainly came out at night. As soon as the sun started to set, I would run yelling all the way up to the beach house. I really did not like those crabs. Story 18. I am specifically germophobic about outside pants. I freak out when people sit in my home on my beloved pillows or furniture wearing pants they had on outside. For example, on the train or bus, which are soaked in bacteria from sweat and urine-covered seats. Once a friend visited me and sat on my sleeping pillow with very dirty pants. and I was dying inside. Also, I am terrified of sharks, even though I have never seen one in nature. Story 19. I call them spider crickets. They are found in the southeastern United States. They love moisture. They look like large jumping spiders. Story 20. Someone walking in on me in the public restroom happens to my friend every single time. I check that door several times before I enter. Story 21. Cotton wool. I can barely type the words without squirming. If I come into contact with it, I will properly freak out. Story 22. Angus Young from Australia/New Zealand new wave of heavy metal. Seeing that foolish grown man dressed as a schoolboy sends shivers down my spine. Story 23. The white part of hard-boiled eggs is slimy, chunky, and rubbery. Actually, eggs in general can be like that. I mostly like eggs, but I also find them gross sometimes. It depends on which part of my brain is in charge at the time whether I find them appetizing or not. Story 24. As a child, and still somewhat true now, I was terrified of balloons. I hated the sound of balloons popping. Any sudden loud noise scared me. I am also quite afraid of electrical sockets. I once saw a large purple fireball shoot out after plugging in a lava lamp as a child, and I have been afraid of outlets ever since. Story 25. Elevators. Not because they might fall, but because I might get stuck with strangers and have to make small talk. Story 26. Realized years ago I probably have a fear of submerged man-made objects after watching a video about it. I remember when I was a kid we went to the Queen Mary, and there was a room where you can see the propeller underwater, and it made me very uncomfortable for some reason. That is just one of many examples, but I never considered it an actual phobia until watching that video, and it all made sense. Story 27. Sunken objects or large items in the water do not scare me. I am not afraid of swimming in the open ocean or encountering animals. I am referring to sunken planes, ship propellers, and submarines. Whenever I see a scuba diver point of view, it makes my skin crawl. Story 28. For some reason, I am really paranoid about something falling on my head. Occasionally, I look around to make sure that nothing nearby could potentially fall on me. I am cautious of ceiling fans. Story 29. Yawning with my mouth wide open. I had my jaw lock up for about 5 seconds 10 years ago and have not yawned the same way since. Story 30. Frogs, especially toads and larger frogs. Also, a fear of the lights flicking off. Not like in a power outage, but literally the light switch being turned off without anyone touching it, especially if I am in the shower or if it is at night. Story 31. Heights. I just can't. I don't even appreciate being this tall. My feet, ankles, and legs get the shivers, as in they get cold and physically shiver. This happens to me even if I watch something that is high. Example. I was watching a recent Top Chef season episode where the contestants were on a very tall building in Canada. At the highest point in this building, with no railing, just harnesses, they had to walk the entire circumference. At some point, they had to extend themselves over the edge, both looking down and then turning around and extending themselves looking up. The entire time, my feet, ankles, and legs just shivered. If I am home safe on my sofa, all is good and I can deal with it. In real life, out and about in the world, it is so painful, as if 10,000 ice picks are shoved into me. I still do it, but after it's done, I need to sit and let my legs rest for a few minutes. Story 32. The stairs and opening eggs. Once when I was a child, I fell backward down some stairs and hit the back of my head. I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. My vision was blurry, and I couldn't speak or move. I thought I was going to die there. Since then, going up or down stairs scares me. With eggs, it is a recent issue. About a year ago, I opened an egg, and a disgusting chicken fetus came out. Since then, I have not opened an egg again. Story 33. Touching assistance equipment like canes, walkers, and wheelchairs has always grossed me out since I was a kid, and I have no clear reason why. I think it was because I was a very hyper-independent young person who thought I would catch weakness. I also will not touch, go into, or use any of the bathrooms in the house where I grew up. I believe this is related to a particular traumatic experience I had in 3rd grade. Story 34. When I was a smoker, I was so paranoid that I would slip while having a cigarette and somehow jam the cigarette into my eye. I am glad I have since quit. Story 35. I saw a clip of a show where a woman had a leech attached to her eyeball when I was a kid. It caused both a fear of leeches and a fear of things touching eyes. It is a wonder I am able to wear contact lenses. Story 36. I have a strong fear of being without electricity. It started when I was in high school. My father had been on life support since I was in 3rd grade and nearly died one night when we lost power. Even after his passing last year, I still get extremely anxious at the thought of losing power. Story 37. So it is quite common to have trypophobia. It is the fear or disgust of tightly packed holes. Wasp nests, beehives, and other insect holes give me shivers. If there are many holes in a small space, it makes me itchy and I feel like gagging. Story 38. Dead insects. I don't mind live ones, even those that are considered to be creepy. I can easily hold them in my hand, but picking up a dead fly makes me feel uneasy. Not scared or anything, but I don't like it wholeheartedly. Story 39. I do not know if this counts, but I am always suspecting that someone is following me. Whether I am going to work, the grocery store, or home, I am always checking to make sure I have not seen the same car behind me for miles. Story 40. Personally, I suffer from agoraphobia, which is the fear of going outside or being in public. It is very hard for me to do this without being medicated with Xanax. Story 41. Dirty bathtubs. Yes, I shower, but my bathtub is more sparkly than glitter spilled on the concrete on an extremely warm summer day. Story 42. Not sure if it is a phobia, but I usually avoid holding balloons because the thought of accidentally letting them go gives me terrible anxiety. Story 43. I am strangely paranoid about my teeth rotting or grinding them down too much. I am pretty good about brushing and flossing because of this fear, but I do grind my teeth a lot, and I cannot afford a mouthguard, so it is difficult. Story 44. Double yolk eggs. I'm okay if they are scrambled, but just raw or sunny side up creeps me out for some reason. Story 45. I like to sit outside, and the lizards are prolific this year where I live. Not just one, but several come close to my bed. Story 46. Large turtles. Any animal that is larger than it is expected to be for some reason frightens me. Story 47. Airports. Not planes, not flying, just airports. I get the worst anxiety when I have to be in an airport, and I am not really sure why. Story 48. Bananas. After years of seeing videos of 8-legged creatures in them, I cannot cope with the idea of having them in my house. However, I have started to slowly relent, but only if they are not in plastic and I have had a good look at them first. Story 49. I am profoundly and irrationally afraid of injections, blood tests, and intravenous fluids, even though I have many tattoos and piercings. Story 50. I fear machinery and large spinning things, for example, airplane engines, car motors, and wheels. I want to be a pilot. Story 51. Crossing train tracks. Have you ever seen those public service announcements of people trying to beat trains? The car gets completely demolished. Story 52. Toilets where I cannot see the bottom, such as outhouses. I have read many stories about snakes, wasps, bees, and other insects or animals entering places where they are not supposed to go. Story 53. Electric ceiling fans. The kind typically found in bathrooms hidden behind a metal grate. We had one in the house where I grew up. It was supposedly broken for as long as I can remember, but if you flipped the light switch, it still made a noise. I don't know if my dad said that turning it on would cause an electrical problem that could burn the house down or not, but I was convinced that's what would happen. That phobia has transferred to every place I've lived since. I know it's irrational, and I sometimes turn on the fan briefly, but any more than a few minutes, and I start thinking about an electrical fire. Story 54. Thalassophobia means fear of the sea, and I am scared of fish, specifically shrimp. I am also afraid of certain birds, including pigeons, geese, seagulls, vultures, and crows. I am not exactly scared, but I feel disturbed by big open spaces like empty rooms and the province of Saskatchewan. Story 55. You know those cork strips with advertisements and flyers on them on the walls? I'm afraid that the wind is going to blow while I'm walking past them, and I am going to get my eyes injured. Story 56. Driving requires full attention. If I zone out and bump into someone on the street, they will be fine. If I do that on the road, their entire family could be seriously harmed. Story 57. I am afraid of clowns. It started when my mom hired a clown for my 7th birthday party. I know it is an irrational fear, but there is just something terrifying about the crazy hair, the makeup, the baggy pants, and the oversized shoes. Story 58. Vomit. I couldn't really explain why. Obviously, it is not pleasant to see or do for anyone, except a few special people. But for me, I literally cannot stand it. I have a weak stomach. If someone gags or retches near me, or if I smell or see vomit, I immediately start gagging myself. That is not the phobia part. I think that is pretty common. The phobia part is that I get extreme anxiety anytime I gag over anything. Full-blown panic attacks, hyperventilating, and crying if I even think I am going to vomit. It is to the point where if something has upset my stomach and made me nauseous, and I know from experience that I will feel 10 times better physically just getting it out, I cannot. I will lie in a ball of agony having a panic attack for hours until it goes away or my body forces it up anyway. If the latter happens, I will be so stressed and worked up that I am out for the count for at least the entire next day. Story 59. I have an unreasonable fear of lobsters. I don't know why, but they give me an uneasy feeling. I work in the animal care field and have worked with creatures from cows and chickens to snakes and millipedes, but lobsters are a step too far for me for some reason. Story 60. I have an irrational fear that at any moment, the floor will drop beneath me and I will fall into a tank that is either 1,000 feet deep with no knowledge of what is beneath me, a tank with sharks or whales or both. There is no way to get out. I find myself having to take deep breaths and remind myself that it is just in my head and will not actually happen multiple times a week. I have obsessive-compulsive disorder. Story 61. Omatophobia, the fear of eyes. For me, it is particularly stuff touching or coming near the eyes. My vision is poor, and there is not enough money in the world to get me to put contacts in. Also, many scenes in shows and movies that depict eye trauma or any facial gore, whether realistic or so clearly fake that a child could tell it apart, bring me to tears and cause hyperventilation. I wish I were not like this. Story 62. Certain phone calls sound like a disconnected call sound, not available or out of range number message, creepy or unusual voicemails. Certain ringtones, busy tone, dial tone, special information tone, and similar sounds. Story 63. Claymation. Absolutely not. Instant panic the minute I see something even vaguely similar to claymation. Story 64. Feet. Since I was a little kid, I can't look at people's feet if they look unhealthy or injured. For example, nail fungus, skin problems, long nails, dirty toes, blood, injury, etc. Mostly, nobody is allowed to touch my feet or I panic. I cannot wear thongs or rings on my toes. I hate to walk barefoot outside. It's impossible for me to scratch or massage my feet. A few years ago, I broke my left foot. I cried like a baby when the medical staff had to manipulate my foot. Not because of the pain, yes, it was painful, but because my foot was manipulated by other people and it was impossible for me to avoid it. Story 65. Food on my hands. I eat fries and pizza with a fork, but only food bothers me. I can handle almost anything else, just please not food. Story 66. Caterpillars make me sob like I have been violently kicked or punched. Barnacles make me feel nauseous. Story 67. I am terrified of vomit. I do not know if that is weird or not, but my phobia is extreme. I avoid certain foods if I think they will make me sick. I wear gloves and a mask and carry disinfectant with me if my children are sick. If I ever feel nauseous, it sends me into a panic attack. Story 68. Taking too long to read a food menu and feeling like everyone is silently judging me, forcing me to move faster. Story 69. Balloons. It is not just the popping. They disgust me just seeing one. I have no idea why. The thought of touching an inflated balloon makes me feel ill. I would honestly rather touch a dead rat. Story 70. Sloths because of a children's book I had, which my mother refused to throw out even when I repeatedly tried to hide it, the way a 5-year-old knows how to. Story 71. Fans. I got my hair caught in one as a child. I hate the sound. I even hate air blowing on my skin. I hate everything about it. Story 72. As a father of a young child, I am absolutely freaked out by children losing their teeth. I have nieces and nephews who are older and have started losing their baby teeth, and as an adult, the whole process gives me the creeps. I am not looking forward to this for my daughter. Story 73. Not so much a phobia, but the texture of velvet, some suede and corduroy, and socks on carpet give me the willies. Like when you involuntarily shudder with your whole being from nails on blackboards or forks squeaking on plates. I am not sure what other people call it. Story 74. Fear of virtual reality. I do not know why, but whenever I put on a headset, I get this irrational fear that all of it is fake. I start sweating and feeling anxious. My mind is like, get out of here now. Story 75. Fleas are difficult to eliminate. I had them once in an apartment. While holding my sister's cat, I saw one running across the cat's face. I put the cat down and ran. Story 76. Deer cause more human deaths each year than any other animal. They carry ticks that transmit Lyme disease, both the treatable and untreatable types. Story 77. An earthquake occurred while I was driving over a bridge, causing me to plunge into the water. I was unable to get out and drowned. I always roll all 4 windows down when I drive over bridges, regardless of the weather. Story 78. Kneecaps touching my kneecaps freaks me out. My husband says that it is very strange, but he also knows never to let his kneecap touch mine when we are in bed. Story 79. Turkeys. When I was a child, I was chased by multiple bush turkeys both in public and at a petting zoo. I only overcame the phobia in my late teens. They are frightening. Story 80. Not mine, but my girlfriend has a strange phobia of screws. She is only afraid of the top part, not the threading. I asked her if this was related to a traumatic event as a child, but she says she has no idea. It is difficult because there have been times when we cannot sit somewhere because it would be a metal or wooden table with screws, or we cannot use certain cookware. Forget about trying to take her out onto the boardwalk. So yes, that is a pretty unusual phobia. Story 81. Do not put paper, tissue, or anything into your mouth or I will shrivel up and die. I think it stems from when children used to lose their teeth and then put the paper in the hole. Just thinking about it makes me squirm. Story 82. The doorknob or handle used to exit a public bathroom. Yogurt with fruit at the bottom, which reminds me of mucus. Undercooked meats. Story 83. I get a lot of panic when a toilet is clogged. It does not have to be me who clogged it, like from pooping, but it makes me really uncomfortable and causes some panic attacks. Story 84. Artificial intelligence generated videos of unusual creatures moving unnaturally. Their unpredictable movements and shapes make me feel as if they are really in front of me. A body part might crawl toward me, touch me, then suddenly wrap around me, enter my insides, and somehow cause harm. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. Imagine small, slimy tree roots moving toward you and going into places in your body where you would not want them to go. I do not know how else to describe it. It just makes me squirm and shudder. Story 85. Negative pictures where the colors are reversed have always scared me since I was a child. People appear as blue creatures with black eyes and black teeth. Everything else is also the wrong color. Story 86. I am oddly afraid of video game glitches or errors. I do not know how to explain it. I once removed a Nintendo Switch cartridge while the game was running and received a message on screen politely telling me not to do that again. I was genuinely nervous for a moment. I also feel uneasy when something happens that I know should not be happening. For example, if I suddenly lost control of my character, I would be very put off by it. Maybe that is just my fear of things going against my expectations and comfort. Story 87. Moths, particularly the large ones, make me scream and run away until my wife deals with them. This fear dates back to a childhood experience when I got out of bed and a huge moth flew out. The thought that I had slept all night with it completely terrified me, and the feeling has persisted. Story 88. Not me, but a friend had an inexplicable dislike for those floppy satin labels you get in underwear. His wife had to remove them all. Then, while eating cornflakes, he had to eat quickly because if they became too soggy, they reminded him of those abominable labels. Story 89. I don't know if anyone else has this, but it's not really a phobia of water. It's more like a feeling or phobia. If I sit in water too long and get wrinkly hands, I can't stand it, and it bothers me. When I was younger, to counter it, I would put my hands on my head to avoid the feeling or to distract myself. As I got older, if I just let my hands dry on their own, everything is fine. If I dry my hands straight away, I suffer from that wrinkly feeling. So this is, in a way, a mental problem for me. Does anyone else have this? I did see someone else experiencing it at a swimming center called the Playdrome, which has sadly now closed. Story 90. Growing up, I was afraid of jewelry, but I have mostly overcome this fear because I now wear necklaces. Before deciding to overcome this irrational fear, I felt absolutely disgusted by all metal jewelry that had been worn by someone, and even more disgusted by metal that people put through their bodies. I am thinking about piercing my ears right now. I am still uncomfortable with touching piercings of any kind, but it is not as bad as before. Story 91. Used coffee grounds disgust me. Gritty foulness emptying the French press, staining my sink, and fouling the compost bin. Blech. About equal to finding a black, slimy, rotting potato or a wool moth maggot infestation, though those things are much less likely to happen. Story 92. I refuse to let people into my house with their shoes on. That is how I was raised. Obviously, if workmen are in, I clean the floorboards as soon as they leave. Everyone else knows. Shoes off or do not bother knocking on the door. Story 93. I have acmephobia. I feel safe holding tools in my hands, but as soon as they point at me, it is a completely different story. I never point my pencil toward my face. Instead, I hold it in my teeth out of fear. Story 94. Slime makes me feel nauseous. I have a daughter who has always been obsessed with slime, and she sometimes makes me touch it, which is always a horrible experience. Even just looking at it makes me want to throw up. Story 95. I would say specific loud noises like thunder, fire alarms, dog whistles, and similar sounds. Screaming when I am not doing it, balloons popping, and so on. Story 96. Whole and open sky phobia. I posted an animated video of what I see, and it was removed for causing a person to develop a phobia. Story 97. Butterflies and moths. Very recently, canned drinks. I need to pour them out so that I know for sure there is nothing else in them. Story 98. I hate black toilet seats. I have hated them since I was a kid. When I was little, I refused to use them even when I had to go. Story 99. I cannot eat meat on the bone or touch meat on the bone. I can touch meat and touch bones. I eat meat, but I cannot physically eat meat off the bone itself. I wish I could eat ribs or chicken wings. I can eat the meat if someone else removes it from the bone for me. I go into full-blown panic. Shakes, heart palpitations, sweats, hyperventilation. The whole 9 yards. Story 100. Snails possibly led to pursuing a career in pest control. Anything to destroy more snails, as long as I do not have to actually see them. Story 101. I am absolutely terrified of certain kinds of evergreen trees. I will cross the road just to avoid walking near them, and then cross back once I am past that part of the street. I have no rational reason. I just cannot make myself go near them without panicking. Story 102. Not being able to breathe in any way, even if I feel like I can't take a deep enough breath or if hiccups ruin a yawn. I think it is rooted in when I drowned when I was younger. My heart stopped for at least 1 minute, maybe more. I do not have an exact time because my cousin was too busy saving me to count. Basically, when I was near death, it freaked me out for a number of reasons. I remember being a conscious entity, but there was nothing there. I was drifting through an empty void as a memory, so not breathing. Story 103. I have a fear of touching drains, including the bathtub, pool, and garbage disposal. It does not matter. I am also afraid of hot tub jets. I have had this fear all my life. Story 104. I do not know if it is that weird, but it is rather niche. Big things under the water. Creatures, especially inanimate objects like trees or debris. I first realized I had it when I watched Titanic dive videos when the bow appears out of the darkness. Story 105. Dropping my phone on the carpet, it fell from an inch and broke. Since then, I have never felt the same about carpets and phones. Story 106. Turns out I am deeply afraid of being in the ocean. I can swim in the ocean, but I have to be able to see land. Otherwise, I am scared of fish and whatever else is in there, also frogs. Story 107. I cannot stand touching a shower wall or a bathtub. Cannot take baths. The cold, jarring difference it brings in my hot, steamy shower is so intense that I start freaking out. Story 108. Looking up at the sky when there are big or tall objects, or just looking up in general, makes me dizzy and my knees give out because I am terrified of how big the sky and buildings are in comparison to me. I think it comes from the fact that if something large fell over, I would not have an escape. In short, I am scared of looking up at the sky or really big objects such as huge statues and pillars. Other fears that people notice quickly are being perceived the wrong way, failing, public speaking, sandpaper or similar textures, a lot of noise, dead silence. Story 109. One grown daughter cannot be near bleach. It frightens her greatly. For me, it is chickens, unpleasant little creatures. I also have another daughter with misophonia. She becomes very angry. Story 110. Thalassophobia, or fear of the sea, is something I used to have. Playing Subnautica certainly made it easier to deal with, but it still gives me the creeps. Story 111. Stickers do not matter, fruit stickers, kid stickers, etc. They give me severe anxiety and discomfort. I do not know what happened. Quality control stickers must be removed before placing anything on. If there is a sticker on a cereal box, I will not eat the cereal. This is just a problem I have. When kids get a sticker book, I throw it in the trash when they are not looking. I am sorry. Story 112. I have a fear of spiral staircases. I am okay if it is only a turn or two, but more than that, my knees get wobbly. Story 113. Fire. Heat. Anything hot enough to potentially cause injury if touched. I have gotten better, but for a long time I could not use ovens. I always had to have someone put things in and take them out for me. I also had difficulty cooking with a stove or making recipes that included hot oil. For years, I relied solely on a microwave. Candles, curling irons, wax warmers, kettles, anything that could get too hot were off limits. Story 114. Suckermouth catfish. I am deeply and irrationally petrified of suckermouth catfish, to the point that I cannot go near the fish section in any pet store. If I am visiting a friend who has one, they must cover the tank before I will even walk in. No idea why. Story 115. I fear driving because I do not drive. Walking down slopes is difficult. Someone has to hold my hand. I am afraid of water bugs, which is why I cannot move south. Story 116. Pteronarchophobia is the fear of flies. My specific fear is of flies, not fruit flies but house flies or bigger, crawling into my mouth, nose, or ears while I sleep. Story 117. Sweating. Not sweat, but the actual act of sweating. Just the thought of sweat coming out of my pores kind of makes me panic. Story 118. Maybe not a full-on panic-inducing phobia, but walking on wet grass is unpleasant. Also, walking on a wobbly pier or dock, or walking on manhole covers. Story 119. Heights, but specifically the odd worry that I will jump off. I am not suicidal in any way, shape, or form, but I fear that some compulsion will just take over and I will hurl myself off a balcony or cliff. I have a similar fear of blurting something out in church or some other quiet, solemn gathering of many people. Story 120. Little piece of toilet paper on the floor. Only toilet paper though, not paper towels or anything like that. Public bathrooms and bathrooms at other people's homes are the worst. We never have toilet paper on the floor at my house. Story 121. Submarines are not just excursion submersibles like ocean gates, but also traditional military submarines. Being confined in a tube with strangers at any depth with no way of stepping outside to take a moment without light and with limited air sounds like hell. Story 122. Fear of having an extremely congested nose makes me feel like I am not getting enough oxygen and that I will suffocate. Breathing through my mouth without the help of my nose is not enough. I feel panicked. Story 123. My dog does not drink enough water, and his kidneys may shut down. Yes, it is concerning. Yes, I have anxiety. Yes, I have 2 therapists. Yes, my dog has regular veterinary visits. He is fine. I, however, am another story. Story 124. Someone is trying to open my car door at a stoplight or stop sign, or at any time. Therefore, I press the lock button on my car door every single time I stop the car for any reason, and sometimes even when I am driving down the road. Story 125. I am worried that my natural gas will leak, usually while I am using my gas stove, and I will die in a horrible explosion or from carbon monoxide poisoning. Story 126. Sick people. I was in distress on our recent cruise. I was hand washing and using hand sanitizer like a crazy lady, refused to touch handrails or use elevators, refused to go into the buffet or the theater. I saw so many sick people that I became more and more paranoid as the week went on. And yes, I came home with coronavirus disease. Story 127. Bugs crawling into my ear or being in a soda can and me drinking them. Being grabbed by something while swimming. Jaws and Are You Afraid of the Dark? Definitely influenced that fear. Ants crawling in my hair because it happened to me before at an ex's place. I also develop severe welts if they bite me. Crabs. My grandfather threw several at me on a beach trip at night when I was 12. I freaked out so badly my grandmother gave me medication to calm down. He also used to chase us with his capped insulin needles, so blood draws and intravenous therapy are difficult for me. Howie the crab helped me get more comfortable with video and pictures of crabs, though. May she rest in peace. Story 128. Rats. I have always had a phobia, but my current place is the first time in my 30 years I have lived around them. We had an earthquake last year, and I was walking to my car when it happened. There were literally hundreds of rats running down the street. I was in a full-blown panic attack that had nothing to do with the actual earthquake. Story 129. Execution. Plugging my ears, saying la 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 la, as I race out of the room if the subject comes up in any form. Talk, drama, or comedy. Not always appreciated by others. No real-life association, so no idea why. Story 130. I get panic attacks when I get in the bathtub or if I am alone in any large body of water. I am afraid there is a shark in the water that I cannot see. Story 131. Spiders. But not just in the sense of them being creepy crawlies. I will run, scream, cower in a corner, hyperventilate, and cry. I always imagine that any time I am walking in a small town or even near a tree, bush, or abandoned building, I have walked through cobwebs. I obsessively wipe my arms for the rest of the day to make sure I do not have a spider on me. It is really bad. Story 132. It's actually pretty common, but I have emetophobia, which is the fear of vomiting. Not as bad as others, but mine is still pretty severe. I literally freak out when someone says they don't feel well or might vomit. I can't stand the sound at all. If someone coughs too hard, I walk away or plug my ears. My heart starts to race, and I genuinely become very anxious. I also cannot watch roller coaster videos without reading the comments first. The only vomit I can handle is baby vomit. I can barely deal with cat or dog vomit either. Some people are worse than me. Apparently, eating chicken or something related to chicken is a trigger for emetophobia, or so I've heard. Story 133. There are too many windows at night. I do not know what is outside, and if the lights are on, they can see me, but I cannot see them. Story 134. I am scared of dwarfs. Big people in small bodies freak me out. I feel like they are going to get on my head and bite my flesh off. Story 135. Those big miller moths. The sound of the fluttering wings close to my ears, in my face, really wigs me out. That is why I would never have a bird. It is that sound. Story 136. People running their hands or feet across carpet. The feeling drives me nuts. It is like the chalkboard, but with carpet. Story 137. Wet or sticky paper. If it is thicker, like vinyl stickers, it does not bother me as much. Textures like paper towels are okay. However, price stickers on items, wet straws, thin paper stickers, and similar things are very unpleasant to me. Maybe it is some kind of germophobia. I do not know, but I hate it. Story 138. When I was little, I had a weird irrational fear of black socks. I couldn't stand seeing them in my presence. Then, all of a sudden, overnight, it became mandatory for me to wear them because my Catholic high school required black socks, and the phobia kind of disappeared. Story 139. I have a fear of being considered a nuisance. I never text first, never say hello first, and never initiate contact with anyone, not even family. This is probably why I have no friends because I lost touch with them over the years. Every time I pick up my phone to say, "Hey, how are you? How have you been?" I see them reading my text and rolling their eyes, annoyed that I have bothered them. It makes for a very lonely life. Story 140. Raw meat. I am not grossed out by the fact that it is a dead animal or that it can carry disease. I am not a moral vegetarian or vegan or anything like that. It just looks scary, and I have nightmares about everything being made of it frequently. I do not even know what my logic is, but I guess that is why it counts as a phobia. Story 141. So, first and foremost, I have a documented resistance to painkillers and sedatives. I generally do not take either because they are not consistently effective. I am concerned about an upcoming procedure because I am having some nerve tumors removed from my foot. I have a high tolerance for pain, but I am a little concerned about the recovery. I know the phobia is not unusual, but the reason for it is what makes it unusual. Story 142. I really do not like touching super dry paper because I am scared of paper cuts, so even touching it makes my skin crawl. Story 143. Any animal with fur and a triangular head. Main targets are rats and mice. They are extremely hideous and scary. I have recently started to fear rabbits and squirrels because of their similar features. Story 144. The sensation of getting shocked, like the small shock you get when randomly touching something metal. I seriously hate it so much. When I feel static cling, I get scared to type afterwards, so I am very careful about touching metal surfaces after peeling static cling. Story 145. I don't know if it is trypophobia or something else, but when I had newborns and their umbilical stump would fall off, it took everything in me not to pass out. I cannot handle raw-looking belly buttons or large wounds on a body that are hole-shaped. It makes me want to die just thinking about it. Story 146. Moles and beauty marks. I do not like them. I even dislike the word. I try to cover mine with tattoos and have even had some removed. Sometimes they are the only thing I notice in a person, and it makes me uncomfortable. Story 147. I wear dishwashing gloves because I have eczema. I am terrified of putting them on one day and finding a spider inside. Story 148. When I am out walking, I am scared of the ground suddenly collapsing around me. Holes and cracks in the asphalt make it worse. Story 149. Trypophobia is especially challenging given my fascination with marine biology since this sort of thing occurs often in the marine environment. It is like a cruel joke from the universe. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.